At Christmas, my niece opened my gift, laughed, and said, "An iPad mini? That's all I get." She threw it at me. I stood up calmly, collected every gift I'd brought, 16 wrapped boxes, and loaded them back in my car. Dad yelled, "Don't be dramatic." I replied, "I'm not, but tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm updating the mortgage autopay." He went silent. That night, I was standing in my parents' living room on Christmas morning, holding a mug of lukewarm coffee, when my niece ripped open my gift, stared at it for half a second, and then laughed like I'd handed her a used sock. She lifted the box up so everyone could see. "An iPad mini," she said loud and clear. "That's all I get." Before I could even process the words, she tossed it straight at my chest. It wasn't hard enough to hurt, but it was hard enough to make a point. The room burst into that uncomfortable kind of laughter, the kind people use when they don't want to admit something ugly just happened. My son, Ethan, was sitting cross-legged on the rug near the tree. He flinched like the iPad had hit him instead of me. Ethan was 8, quiet, polite, the kind of kid who says, "Excuse me," if he needs to walk past you. He had spent the whole drive over talking about how maybe Grandpa would finally hang his drawing on the fridge this year. I looked down and saw Ethan's hands tighten around the little paper snowflake he brought as a gift for Grandma. My mom didn't say a word. She just took a sip of her mimosa and smiled like this was cute. My sister Carrera actually smirked like her daughter had just delivered a punchline. And my dad leaned back in his recliner and said, "She's just being honest." My throat went tight. I didn't yell. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just stood up, walked over to the pile of wrapped gifts I had brought, 16 boxes, all neatly labeled, all picked out with care, and started picking them up one by one. Tape crinkled under my fingers. Ball loops slid loose. Kara blinked like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Arnold, what are you doing?" she asked. I didn't answer. I kept collecting. The gifts were for everyone. My parents, my sister, and her husband, my niece, my nephew, my cousins, who always happened to stop by, even my dad's neighbor who somehow always ended up at family holidays and always went home with a bottle of something expensive. I had bought them all anyway, because that's what I did. I stacked the boxes in my arms until I could barely see over them, then made 2 trips out to my car. Behind me, my dad finally raised his voice. "Don't be dramatic," he shouted like I just knocked over the tree. I turned back at the door, keys in my hand, calm as I could possibly be. "I'm not," I said. Then I added the one sentence that made the whole room change temperature. "But tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm updating the mortgage autopay." My dad went silent so fast it was almost funny. Not one more laugh, not one more smirk, just the sound of wrapping paper settling and the low hum of the heater kicking on. Ethan stood up slowly and walked to my side without me calling him. He didn't ask questions. He just slipped his small hand into mine like he already knew this wasn't about one iPad. As we walked out, I heard Kara mutter, "You're really going to ruin Christmas over a joke?" I didn't even look back because that wasn't the joke. The joke was how long I'd been letting them use me. I'm Arnold. I was 39 at the time, living in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I was a dentist on a small practice, and I worked more hours than I like to admit. I was also a single dad. Ethan's mom left when he was 3. No big dramatic story, just a slow fade into I can't do this anymore. And then she was gone. So it was me and Ethan. Homework at the kitchen table, Saturday morning pancakes, school concerts where I clapped too loud, because I knew I was the only parent in the audience for him. And if you asked anyone in my family, I was the stable one. That meant I was the one with the dependable income, which in my family translated to one thing: wallet. It started small like it always does. My parents needed help after my dad retired early. He called it retirement. I called it quitting after he got into a fight with his boss and refused to work under anyone again. Their mortgage wasn't paid off, not even close. So I stepped in. I set up the auto pay from my account because Dad didn't trust online banking. Every month, the payment went out like clockwork. $1,842.17. At first, my mom said thank you. Then it became normal. Then it became expected. Then it became something they acted like they'd earned. If the payment ever processed a day late because of a holiday, My dad would text me like I'd committed a crime. Mortgage didn't go through. Fix it. No. Hey, no. Hope you're okay. Just that. And it wasn't just the mortgage. It was the property taxes. Just this once. It was their HVAC replacement when it died in July. It was my mom's dental implants, which she insisted she shouldn't have to pay for, because I was a dentist. It was Carrara's emergency every other month. Cara was 36, married, 2 kids, constantly struggling, constantly just about to get on her feet. One month it was the minivan payment. Another month it was private dance lessons for my niece because she's talented. Arnold, don't crush her dreams. Another month it was their credit card minimum because they had had a tough season. I helped because I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was family. And every time I tried to pull back, even a little, something would happen, a comment, a slight, a little reminder that Ethan and I were guests in the family, not really part of the center of it. Ethan noticed things long before I wanted him to. He noticed that Grandma always had his cousin's favorite snacks, but never his. He noticed that his cousins got big matching stockings with their names stitched on. And he got a plain red one someone bought last minute. He noticed that when family photos happened, Carrara's kids were pulled into the middle, and Ethan got placed on the edge like an accessory. He never complained. He just got quieter. One Thanksgiving when he was 6, my mom handed out slices of pie. My nephew got the biggest slice. My niece got whipped cream shaped like a perfect swirl. Ethan got a thin piece with the crust broken off. He didn't cry. He just whispered to me, "It's okay, Dad. I don't need much." That sentence hit me harder than anything. Because no kid should learn to shrink to survive family time. But I kept going anyway. I kept paying, kept showing up, kept buying gifts too expensive for people who barely acted like they liked us. I thought if I stayed generous, they'd stay kind. I thought if I stayed useful, they'd stay loving. I didn't want to admit the truth. They weren't loving. They were comfortable. That Christmas morning, the iPad morning, wasn't the first sign. It was just the clearest one. I had chosen the iPad mini after my niece begged for one all year. I didn't even want to give her something that expensive. Not after the way she talked to Ethan sometimes. But I did it because Cara kept texting me. She's been working so hard in school. She's been such a good helper. She really deserves something big. Cara didn't say please. She never said if you can. She just wrote like I was the family's personal Amazon account, so I bought it. I also bought my nephew a gaming headset. I bought my mom a new stand mixer because she'd been complaining hers was old and ugly. I bought my dad a fancy smartwatch he'd pointed at in a store 2 months earlier and said, "Must be nice to waste money like that." I bought gift cards for cousins. I bought warm winter boots for Ethan's little cousin because Cara said she couldn't afford them. 16 gifts, carefully wrapped labels. Bows, the whole thing. And the moment my niece didn't feel impressed enough, she threw it at me like I was nothing, like my effort was a joke. And the worst part, the way Ethan looked at me, not angry, just embarrassed, like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. That was my last straw, not the iPad, not the laughter. That look on my son's face because I could take disrespect. I'd been swallowing it for years. But I wasn't going to teach my kid that love means letting people treat you like trash. That night, back at our house, I didn't decorate more. I didn't force cheer. I made Ethan grilled cheese and tomato soup. He sat at the kitchen island, still in his Christmas sweater, rubbing the edge of his paper snowflake between his fingers. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. That question cracked something inside me. I set my bowl down and took a breath. "No," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." He nodded like he wanted to believe me, but didn't fully. I reached for his little drawing folder, the one he always carried to family events because he liked bringing people pictures. He opened it and showed me the one he'd made for my parents. Their house, a big tree, stick figures holding hands. He had written, "Merry Christmas, Grandpa plus Grandma," in careful block letters. "It's okay," he said again too quickly. "We can just stay home next time." I stared at that drawing and felt my jaw tighten. We weren't going to just stay home next time. We were going to stop funding the people who made my child feel unwanted. So after Ethan went to bed, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The house was quiet, The kind of quiet where you can hear the fridge hum and the heater click. I logged into my bank. There it was, the recurring payment. Mortgage autopay, $1,842.17, scheduled monthly. I hovered over it for a second. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't doing this out of rage. I was doing it out of clarity. I clicked. I selected Edit Payment. I changed the funding account from my checking to nothing. Then I hit Cancel Autopay. A warning popped up. Canceling this recurring payment may result in missed payments. I stared at it. Then I clicked Confirm. The confirmation screen loaded. Your recurring payment has been canceled. I took a screenshot. Then I opened a second tab and logged into the joint account I'd set up years ago for family expenses. That account was where I'd been funneling money for Cara and my parents to use for emergencies. It wasn't supposed to be a free-for-all. It had become one. I transferred the remaining balance $6 for $13.28 back into my main account. Then I closed it. The bank asked for a reason. I typed no longer needed because I didn't owe them a paragraph. I owed Ethan protection. I set my alarm for 8:45 a.m. Not because I had more to do with the bank, but because I knew the second my dad woke up and checked his account, the panic would start, and I wanted to be awake and steady when it did. At 9:07 a.m., my phone rang. Dad, I let it ring twice, then answered. Morning, I said. No warmth, no anger, just a fact. His voice was sharp and tight. What did you do? I didn't pretend not to know. I canceled the autopay. I said a beat of silence. Then he snapped. You can't do that. I almost laughed. He said it like the mortgage belonged to me, like I was canceling my own obligation. It's your mortgage, I said. You can pay it. My mom's voice came through in the background, muffled but frantic. What is he saying? Tell him to stop. Dad lowered his voice like he was trying to sound reasonable. Arnold, you're upset. Fine, but you don't punish us over a kid's comment. There it was, a kid's comment. Like my niece throwing a $500 plus gift at me was normal. Like everyone laughing while Ethan sat there shrinking was a harmless moment. I kept my voice even. It wasn't one comment. I said, it's been years. He tried to interrupt. I continued anyway. You don't get to treat my son like he's optional and still expect me to fund your life. Dad exhaled hard. You're being dramatic. Same word as yesterday. Same script. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the Christmas tree in our living room, smaller than my parents', a little lopsided, covered in Ethan's handmade ornaments. I'm not, I said. I'm just done. My dad's tone changed fast. Not softer, desperate. Arnold, we counted on you. Of course they did. That was the whole problem. You shouldn't have, I said. He raised his voice again. So what? You're cutting us off? All because Kara's kid mouthed off. I didn't take the bait. I'm not your backup bank, I said. And Ethan and I won't be spending holidays where we're laughed at. He went quiet. Not because he understood, because he was doing the math, because he knew exactly how much he'd been leaning on me. My mom took the phone, voice shaky, like she was about to cry. Arnold, honey, please. We didn't mean anything by it. She's a teenager. You know how kids are. I stared at the wall for a second, remembering Ethan's face. I know how my kid is, I said. He's kind. He's quiet. He tries hard. And you all make him feel small. She sniffed. So what do we do? That question almost made me laugh again, because it wasn't how do we fix what we did to Ethan. It was how do we fix the money problem. You figured out, I said. Then, because I still wasn't cruel, I added. I'm not blocking you. I'm not screaming, but the money is done. That's the boundary. My mom whispered. This is going to ruin the family. I swallowed. No, I said you did that. I'm just not paying for it anymore. Then I ended the call. The fallout came in waves. First it was Dad calling over and over like if he called enough, I'd fold. Then it was Kara texting paragraphs. You embarrassed my daughter. She didn't mean it like that. You're acting like some hero. Mom is crying. Then the guilt trips got more specific. Kara, do you know what happens if Dad misses the mortgage? They could lose the house. I stared at that message for a long time because I didn't know. I'd known for years. That's why I'd kept paying. That's why I'd let them use me. But then I looked at Ethan sitting on the floor building a Lego set, humming to himself, finally relaxed, because we weren't driving to someone else's house to be tolerated. And I realized something simple. If my parents lost the house, it wouldn't be because I stopped paying. It would be because they built their whole life around assuming I always would. That wasn't my emergency to solve anymore. Kara showed up at my office 2 days later, not for a dental appointment, just storming into my waiting room like she owned the place. My receptionist's eyes went wide. "Sir, it's fine," I said, standing up. I walked Kara into my private office and closed the door. She didn't sit. She crossed her arms and said, "So you're really doing this?" I stayed calm. "Yes." Her voice cracked, but not from sadness, from anger. "You're punishing Mom and Dad because my daughter didn't like a gift." I blinked slowly. "That's not what happened," I said. "And you know it." She scoffed. "She's a teenager. She's dramatic. She didn't throw it hard." I stared at Kara until she got uncomfortable. "Ethan was sitting right there," I said, and everyone laughed. Kara rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Arnold. He's a kid. He'll forget." That sentence made my stomach turn because it wasn't true. Kids remember the feeling. They remember who protected them. They remember who didn't. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "You don't get to decide what my son forgets." Kara's face tightened. Then she tried a new angle. "So what? You're going to let them lose everything after everything they did for you?" I almost asked like, "What?" But I didn't. I kept it simple. "I did a lot for them." I said, "I've been doing it for years, and they've been taking it while treating Ethan like he's less." Kara's eyes flicked away for half a second. That told me she knew. She'd seen the little things. She just benefited from pretending they didn't matter. Then she did what Kara always did when she couldn't win on facts. She went for the emotional punch. "You're always so high and mighty because you're a dentist," she said. "Like you're better than us." I felt my jaw clench, but I stayed steady. "I don't think I'm better," I said. "I think Ethan deserves better." Kara opened her mouth, then shut it, and then she said the quiet part out loud. "So, what am I supposed to do when I need help?" There it was. Not "how do we make things right?" Not "I'm sorry Ethan was hurt." Just "what about my money?" I nodded once. "You budget," I said. "You figured out like every other adult." Kara's face went red. "You're unbelievable." I walked to my office door and opened it. "I'm not arguing," I said. "This conversation is over." Kara stood there a second longer like she expected me to chase her. I didn't. She left. And my receptionist whispered, "Are you okay?" I exhaled. "I am," I said. For the first time in a long time, I meant it. The next week was a flood of messages. My dad left a voicemail where he sounded like he was trying to perform dignity. "I don't know who you think you are, but you don't do this to your parents." My mom left one that sounded softer, but still wrong. "We're family. Family helps family." I didn't call back. I didn't explain again because boundaries aren't negotiations. They're statements. The only person I explained things to was Ethan. Not in a heavy way, just honest. We were brushing teeth one night when he asked, "Are we going to Grandma's again?" I looked at him in the mirror. "No," I said. "Not for a while." He paused, toothbrush in his mouth. "Did they not want us there?" My throat tightened again. But I didn't lie. "Sometimes people don't know how to be kind," I said. "And I'm not going to put you in places that make you feel bad." Ethan swallowed, then nodded. And then he surprised me. "Okay," he said. "Can we do Christmas at home next year? With pancakes?" I laughed softly. "With pancakes?" I promised. In January, the consequences got real for them. Not for me. For them. Dad missed the first payment. Not because he couldn't scrape together anything. Because he was stubborn. Because he thought I'd panic and fix it. Instead, he got a late notice. Then another. Then he called me again, voice shaking with anger. "You're really going to let this happen?" I didn't match his tone. "You're really going to let your own mortgage happen?" I corrected. He cursed under his breath. Then came the next level of manipulation. My aunt called not to ask how Ethan was, not to ask why we disappeared. She called to mediate. Arnold, she said, your parents are stressed. Your dad's blood pressure. I stopped her gently. I'm not discussing their health as a bargaining chip. I said, she huffed. You know they love you. I didn't argue. I just said the truth. Love doesn't look like humiliating my kid and expecting me to keep funding them. She went quiet. Then she said, so, you're really cutting them off? Yes, I said. I am. She sighed like I disappointed her. All right, she said. Well, I hope you can live with yourself. I looked at Ethan across the room, building another Lego set, peaceful. I can't, I said, and I hung up. By spring, my parents had refinanced. Not because they wanted to, because they had to. They asked Kara for help. Kara asked my uncle. My uncle said no. They finally did what they should have done years ago. They figured it out without me. And that's when the apologies started. Not real ones, convenient ones. My mom showed up at my house one Saturday with a grocery store pie and watery eyes. Ethan was in the backyard tossing a tennis ball for our dog. My mom stood on my porch and said, can we talk? I didn't invite her in. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She looked offended by that, like she deserved my living room. I'm sorry about Christmas, she said quickly. It got out of hand. I waited. She added, your niece was rude. Still waiting. Then she said, we didn't mean to hurt Ethan. That was the closest she'd gotten to saying his name in weeks. I nodded. Okay, I said. She blinked. That's it. What do you want me to say? I asked. She looked up at me like she couldn't believe I wasn't melting. I want things to go back, she said. I kept my voice calm. No, I said. They can't. Her eyes filled. Arnold, you're being so cold. I didn't budge. I'm being safe. I said for my son. My mom's face tightened. So, you're going to punish us forever. I shook my head. This isn't punishment, I said. This is the consequence. You don't get access to Ethan if you treat him like an afterthought. And you don't get access to my money at all. She whispered, your father is heartbroken. I believe that he was upset. I didn't believe he was heartbroken for the right reasons. I said the boundary one more time. Simple. I won't fund a family my kid isn't part of, I told her. My mom stared at me for a long moment. Then she looked past me toward the backyard where Ethan was laughing because the dog had stolen his glove. And for the first time, I saw something like shame flicker across her face. Not a full apology, but something. She swallowed. Can I at least say hi to him? She asked. I thought about it. Then I said, not today. Her face crumpled like I'd slapped her. But I didn't feel guilty because I wasn't doing this to hurt her. I was doing this to protect Ethan from learning that love means taking whatever you're handed. My mom left the pie on the porch anyway. I threw it away after she drove off. Not dramatically, just quietly, like you do when something is no longer yours. The real closure came the next Christmas. It was just me and Ethan. We stayed home. We made pancakes. We put up our little lopsided tree and hung every paper ornament Ethan had ever made, including the one he brought to my parents' house the year before. He taped a new drawing to our fridge. It was our house this time, just the two of us, a dog, a tree, and a big speech bubble that said, Merry Christmas. No grandparents, no cousins, no 4 smiles. Later that afternoon, my cousin Leah stopped by with her teenage son. She was the one person in my family who had texted after Christmas and said, I saw what happened. I'm sorry. She handed Ethan a small gift bag. Inside was a sketchbook and a set of colored pencils. Ethan's eyes lit up like someone had turned him back on. Leah looked at me and said softly, you did the right thing. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. That night after Ethan went to bed, I sat in the living room with the tree lights glowing and my phone face down on the table. There were no missed calls, no guilt texts, just quiet. And in that quiet, I finally understood what I'd been buying all those years with my money. I'd been buying access. I'd been buying temporary peace. I'd been buying my way into rooms that didn't actually want us. So I stopped. And the funny thing was once I stopped paying, The peace didn't disappear. It improved because, for the first time, the peace was real. I walked into Ethan's room to check on him. He was asleep with his new sketchbook on the pillow beside him like it was treasure. I pulled the blanket up over his shoulder, and I whispered the promise I should have made sooner. "You'll never have to earn your place with me." Then I turned off the light and closed the door. Quiet. Simple. Done. Quick author note. I'm with Arnold. Not because a gift was rejected, but because his son watched a room treat disrespect as entertainment and call it honesty. A parent's first job is safety, and that includes emotional safety. When support turns into entitlement, it stops being care and becomes a demand. The lesson is simple. Generosity needs boundaries, or it trains people to take and trains kids to stay quiet to survive. Arnold stayed calm, ended the open-ended money pipeline, and chose a peaceful home for Ethan. Takeaways. Keep financial help separate from daily banking. Use secure login, alerts, and two-factor authentication. Put any ongoing support in writing with clear amounts, dates, and a hard endpoint. Save records and screenshots, not for drama, but for clarity. And if the pattern doesn't change, set a deadline, communicate it once, and follow.